in your copious free time, if you get a chance, you should watch The Peripheral. It's actually pretty darn good. Yeah, Campbell, I think, wrote it.
Ramsey Campbell
No,
or John
Bruce.
John,
Oh
John
wait,
oh
what?
Bruce.
No, oh my
uh
God, I'm so old. I can't remember anything. All right, the guy who wrote Neuromancer, so that's probably not Campbell at all.
William Gibson.
Gibson, yeah, see that? I don't know what the hell. Anyway, it's a near future that interacts with a far future. I would call it, Cyberpunks meets Dukes of Hazzard, and it's a neat series.
What's it called again?
It's called the Peripheral, as in like an accessory to a computer.
Welcome back to Geek Channel 8. I'm Eric.
And I'm Will. Well, I've been watching stuff with my kid, really about makers. We both love people who make stuff. And this was this awesome maker, Nerd Forges her channel, so we just call her Nerd Forge. And he was like, "Dad, check it out. She has lost one of her fingers in an accident. And she built her own new finger. Oh, and then just went ahead and made an entire tech glove."
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, isn't that badass? Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
God. I'm not even sure if her regular content will be for me, but that was like, oh yeah, I'm all about this because she does a lot of very intricate stuff. She does some really cool miniatures and stuff, but she's really deep into the fantasy, backgrounds and everything. But this was just woo, chef's kiss, cool.
Yeah, I love those. This is like your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, she. I mean, and the thing is that she showed us her iterations of everything. She used 3D printing. She started out with somebody else's, thing for because it's a thing now that people will put up on Thingiverse or one of these other sites, prints so for like prostheses. So she started with one of those. It's just her. It's for her pinky, and it worked really well. But she's like, no, I want to make it cooler, and she has all the skills, so that's what she did. It was really awesome.
I still trying to get my head around like the fact that we have 3D printers at
Right?
all. like like they've been around now for at least a decade, right? And
Oh yeah, easily.
but it still boggles my mind, right? It's like,
Well, yeah, literally. I remember playing games and reading books where this was like, oh, that will happen in the future.
yeah, you know how everything gets smaller and more miniaturized?
Yeah,
At some point, someone is going to figure out how to like get it down to the individual atom. And once they do that, we have Star Trek replicators, right?
we do.
You can make anything once you get to the atomic level, you
Oh
know?
my God. Okay, but that reminds me. I have to show this to my kid because we were talking about. He was talking about. I don't know about this thing whether sentience is all that great after all. I'm like, actually, there's a really good Love and Robots episode about that. We gotta watch that. But it's the it explores the idea of, is sentience actually a great evolutionary thing, or maybe not so much. And yeah, that's what made me think of that. Was I'm like, oh yeah, well, you get down to the individual atom and you can make anything. Man, humans, they're just gonna, oh boy. There's gonna be a gray goo event. There's gonna be something. Uh, we can survive our own cleverness. Will be awesome, but that's still an open question. Which actually, that totally keys in with the theme of this movie. But we'll get to that in a minute, I guess. Oh my gosh.
I've been catching up on old animated things myself, like Love, Death, and Robots. I think the
Mhm.
last one I watched was called Good Hunting, and it was a sort of like a starts out as like a sort of East Asian, I think it's Chinese fable. There's like a were fox girl and
Nice.
and whatever the Chinese equivalent of a samurai is. I don't know, like
Mm.
a swordsman. But then it eventually moves into the future, which is like a steampunk future. 'Cause it moves from the medieval times to the Victorian kind of airships and stuff like that. But that's not the focus of it. It's more about she becomes not just a were fox, but you know, due to fights and stuff like that, has lost parts or something, and he is like an inventor, and so she's like speaking of prosthetic hands, a steampunk,
Cyborg.
yeah, steampunk cyborg slash where like where fox. So
I didn't even. I
steampunk.
wasn't even sure. I didn't know the Chinese had a thing with foxes too. So that's cool. Ah, man. uh, okay, so that's what I love is that we again. We probably say that every time we hang out on this, is it? But like, man, there's so much stuff to watch that's good that it's almost overwhelming. It really is.
It's kind of strange where like geek culture has become mainstream, and we'll talk about this a little when we talk about the movie today,
Yeah.
but nerds were definitely considered like the outsiders at still at the time that this movie was made,
Oh yeah.
and it's very apparent from some of the stuff in it. Let's jump into talking about what things were like in 1993. If you remember, in 1993, in January, Bill Clinton was sworn in as the 42nd US president.
Oh yeah.
I think the year started off pretty hopeful.
Yeah. Hmm.
It would not remain that way, but we're gonna try to keep it positive. In February, the Howard Stern radio show began broadcasting on WRQI 95.1 FM.
Oh my gosh, that was outrageous back then. That was so edgy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tame by today's
Name
standards.
by oh my gosh, he's like a grand old man of radio now. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, has he retired? I don't think he's retired yet, but he's got to be getting there somewhere.
let me put it this way: I'm pretty sure he's been on Terry Gross more than once. So I mean, what do you guys?
Yeah, I heard him on that show, and he was
I
super
mean,
excited to do it.
well, I mean, everybody, even if you don't like his stuff, but you like if he gets the goods, and he gets he gets people talking in a way that I don't know what the hell, man. I don't know how he does it.
And that's, I think, why everybody wanted to hear him on Fresh Air, is
Right?
because when I think of radio interviewers, not TV, but radio interviewers, the first two people I think of are Howard Stern and Terry Gross, right? Okay, so continuing on with 1993, on March 29th, there was the Academy Awards, and the movie Unforgiven took four of them, including Best Picture and Best Director for Clint Eastwood. It's been a while since I went back and watched that, but
I really think it helped change, maybe add to a renaissance in the westerns.
yeah, we're due for another one, right?
Okay, as everybody says, it's like, all right, the comic book movies have run their course. Come on, let's get something new. But who knows? I have no idea what's going to happen next. I'm well past the idea that I can predict that. I mean, but why not a Western Renaissance?
Um, okay, continuing on with 1993, in April 16th, David Lee Roth was arrested in New York City for purchasing marijuana for $10.
Dollars being arrested for purchasing marijuana, and the idea that he would do it himself. Oh my God, there's so many things there. Um, I love humans. We appreciate the variety of intoxicants, and I mean, if you want to know how to do something, if you want to know how to grow something, if you want to know how to build something, find somebody who is trying to get their buzz on and in a related field, and they will show you the way. Nobody else is more innovative. I mean, people like to eat. Yes, people are hungry. Fine. But man, they are not as motivated as people trying to get high. Those people know what's up. I am serious, man. I love it because mushrooms, weed, whatever it is, they know stuff.
Yeah, someone actually like discovered that if you lick frogs, you could get high, right? So it's like,
What were you doing when you're like, man, I'm, I gotta figure out another way to get high. Might as well try this.
other stuff from 1993. On May 20th, a 10-meter meteor comes within 150,000 kilometers of Earth. That's still kind of small compared to the one that killed the
Yeah.
dinosaurs, but
Yeah.
it's big enough to be scary. And 150,000 kilometers, pretty damn close in cosmic terms, you
Yes. Like,
know?
yeah.
In June of 1993, paleontologist Sankar Chatterjee publishes the discovery of Shubasaurus, one of the earliest beaked dinosaurs. He names it after his son Shuvo.
Nice.
Although it is bipedal and beaked, it is more closely related to crocodiles than dinosaurs.
Wow. No kidding. Nice.
Other things that happened in June of 1993, June 9th of 1993, Jurassic Park had its premiere. June 10th of 1993, a team of researchers extracted DNA from a roughly 125 to 130 million year old weevil trapped in amber in Lebanon.
Wow.
And the results were published in Nature on June 10th, 1993, one day after the premiere of Jurassic Park. The discovery showed that DNA from ancient animal remains can be preserved and extracted, and thus it is theoretically possible to obtain dinosaur DNA that way, which previously had been fiction. The next day, June 11th, Jurassic Park goes into wide release. So they beat the release of Jurassic Park by one day.
That was just good for everybody there, huh?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crichton gets some, criticism for being, sort of a hack, but he always has enough good stuff in there that it really makes sense.
Well, there is an allegation that we should probably mention, that there was a short story called something like Capsule for a Dinosaur or something like that, that was published in Omni magazine in the 80s, that had some sort of similar concept. And so there is claim that, Crichton got the idea from that, but who knows?
Yeah. We're not here to litigate.
What we do know is that Crichton followed the scientific literature on stuff, so he
Yeah,
could probably easily connect a couple of dots.
exactly. It's a lot easier when you're doing fiction. It's like, oh, well, that's enough for a good idea. I mean, notoriously, Asimov he just picked out. He's like, oh, okay, electronic brains, positronic brains, cool. Let's go with that, and never changed it. He's just like, what's the point? It's not about what the technology really is. It's about what the results are.
My favorite is Arthur C. Clarke, who says he should have patented this idea when he came up with it, was the idea of a geosynchronous orbit,
Yes. Oh my
a
God. Yeah.
satellite parked in geosynchronous orbit. And now, like, there are only so many quote unquote parking spaces. And
Yes.
so now that's like a hugely controversial thing when it comes to spaces, who gets to have their satellites in those geosynchronous parking spaces,
Yeah.
you
Not to
know?
mention all the leftover ones. Oh my gosh. No, Clark was yeah, he had some really good stuff on that too. I forget what it was, maybe, but Niven came up with some things that were he originated ideas that were later popularized. But
Well, his
in
big one is the Dyson sphere, like, right? Or I guess that's
well,
technically Dyson, but the
I said,
ring
yeah,
world concept.
Ring World. Yes, he did the Ring World, and I think he might have come up with the idea of the space elevator, but I'm not sure about that. That might have been somebody else.
Oh,
They all
yeah.
friends together, and I mean, it's not like these guys literally didn't hang out with each other and like go to conventions together and probably drink a lot and talk a lot of shit. So,
Yeah.
they were all in the same boats. Uh, Sometimes they wrote the same stories.
Yeah. I don't know if Crichton really hung out with that crew much.
No, I don't think so.
He was more with the Hollywood gang and with like the medical community. Like, he was a doctor, right? So
Did he? What is his early hit? Like, was it a plague movie?
he directed, did not write. It was written by another medical thriller writer, Robin Cook, Coma.
Yeah.
But I believe that Crichton directed that. I could be wrong on that, but
I'll probably think of it, but I think he did. I think he might have written Andromeda Strain.
that was his first major success as
That's
a
it.
novel. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I think it was recently remade, shelved in the thriller section alongside
Right.
Tom Clancy and whatnot. And I'm like, you can call it what you want, but this is science fiction.
Right.
It's just very near term science fiction, you know?
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
And for this, I think it's got to be ice cream. It has to be ice cream because there is a scene where the power's out and Jurassic Park, it's a tourist destination. So it's filled with excellent ice cream that you can buy and it's all going to melt. So there's a scene where they're drowning their misery by eating ice cream. Laura Dern and Sir Richard Attenborough. Why not get the wildlife guy to do Jurassic Park? The ice cream's all going to melt because the power's out and there's nothing else they can do. So they're eating ice cream. So I guess my question for you is, what is your favorite ice cream?
This is an old man's choice. Butter pecan is amazing. People who detract from it say, "Oh, it leaves a film of butter fat in your mouth," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's a good thing." But yeah, I remember hating butter pecan when I was a kid. I'm like, "Why is this as salty and sweet? I don't like this. I just want some chocolate." Now I'm like, "This is the stuff, man. It's good." So I'd probably choose that.
I used to be a big fan of butter pecan, but also very popular up here is what they'll say is not ice cream, but is totally soft serve ice cream.
What?
Maple creamies, which is a maple sugar flavored ice cream
Wow,
treat.
that sounds amazing, dude. Whew.
They're very good. They are very good.
I really want that on a waffle cone, but don't pow. Okay.
You
Anyway.
can get it. To pair it to this film specifically, there must be an ice cream that fits the Jurassic Park mold. Ordinarily, speaking of Ben and Jerry's, I would say Rainforest Crunch,
Nice.
but they haven't made Rainforest Crunch in many years. I don't know, it's one of their retired flavors.
They are probably doing out of respect for the rainforest.
I think they are. Well, they originally, it was done to help the rainforest, right? It had to do with like getting the nuts and
Oh
stuff that
yeah.
are in it from local, but I think what happens is, I'm guessing either they could no longer ethically source the
Yeah.
the
That
stuff,
sounds all right.
or it's just not not available now that rainforest has been cut down so much. Like,
Oh, it's sad.
sad, but possibly true, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, let's jump in and talk about this particular film. Spielberg said that the credit for Jurassic Park largely goes to Michael Crichton, because he says, never in a million years would I have come up with the idea of extracting dinosaur DNA from a mosquito trapped in amber. But that is the multi-million-dollar idea behind this movie.
Yeah.
And it's a good one. Rarely does someone come up with what seems like a really new idea. That doesn't happen very often. Usually it's a remake of something old.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a dark and stormy night. Was it dark and stormy? I forget, but it seemed like that. Anyway, it's like, so you open up on this island scene. There's like cages. There's all these men, and they're coordinating the transfer of something inside this cage, right? And I'm just gonna lay it out here. There's a lot of guys there. There's one black guy, and he gets the job of opening the like doing something that's really close. And my kid's like, "Dad, is he gonna make it?" I'm like, "No, I don't think so."
And you never see what gets him, but it does get him. And they're like trying to close the cage door and everything.
Yeah, yeah, they're like, oh, and they're using tasers to shock the beast. And then actually, there's one guy who's been coordinating everything. He's holding on to him. He's trying to let go because the thing's tearing at him, trying to pull him in. He finally just like, shoot it. Which yeah, they probably should have shot it. That was, but later, I'll find out more later. So that's the opening. We learn to be afraid of this horrible beastie, whatever it is.
And then it cuts to a dig in the Montana Badlands area or something like that, where Grant and Ellie, a paleontologist and a paleobotanist,
Yeah,
played by Sam Neill and Laura Dern, are digging up dinosaur bones. He has a claw. He has a velociraptor claw.
yeah. There's some kid who's like, "What's the big deal? It looks like a big chicken or no, a giant turkey." He's like, "Oh, that's all right. You don't respect the dinosaur? Let me just tell you how they would kill you." And he has this elaborate thing and all about like how they would cut his guts open, but one would be looking at him from the front and staring him dead in the eyes, while the other two came from the sides. And yeah, and his wife girlfriend, the Laura Dern character's like, you could have just pulled a gun on the kid. And he's like, got it. And we introduced the idea that he doesn't like kids.
Yeah.
Doesn't want them. Yeah.
Yeah. And she wants kids.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the backstory there, which I don't know if that was even a thing in the novel.
Yeah.
Anyway, they just made this major discovery when a helicopter shows up. This helicopter has Hammond, played by Sir Richard Attenborough,
Yeah.
who convinces them that he will fund their research for 3 years, fully fund, if they come to
Yeah.
this island and be their dinosaur experts.
He shows up and he's all like, oh, and he's like, he walks into their trailer, he busts out their champagne, and he's like, who the hell are you? And he's like, oh, I'm Richard, the guy who gave you 50 grand. He's like, oh yeah, so that's enough to make him listen. And then but then he's like, no, I couldn't possibly leave this place. We're in the middle of a major discovery. And he's like, yeah, well, what I could do is just give you a lot of money. And he's like, oh, well, okay, we'll be right there, because yeah, he wants to pursue his crazy dream.
The thing becomes, it's Crichtonist aboard this helicopter, because they meet Ian Malcolm,
Yeah,
played by
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, who's always awesome, of course.
Yes, he is.
And the thing is, the reason I say this is Crichtonist is because Jeff Goldblum is basically a Mary Sue type character. He is more or less the voice of Crichton, but Ian Malcolm is like a mathematician who specializes in chaos theory and stuff like that. What this has to do with dinosaurs, who the hell knows? But except for, it's like, I think Crichton was just like, it was another one of his interests at the time. He was like, oh, chaos theory, that's cool. Like, I like this. Let's just throw this mathematician guy in there and sort of shoehorn him in, when in fact there's like a ton of other things, like, biologists or chemists or something
Right.
else.
I think honestly I got the feeling like, oh, it's like he was a rock star scientist and he was the hot shit. And so that's why he was there, is because if he could get a rock star famous guy sign off on it, and these other people were famous in their fields or whatever, but this guy was like, Feynman, Richard Feynman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got. Oh, that's one smart guy signed off on this. So it's all good, because that's why he gathered these scientists. He's like, oh, they are trying to shut me down. So I need people to tell them it's okay. Great character. As soon as my kid saw him, he's like, I like that guy. Like,
Well, yeah, you're supposed to, right? He's the rock star. It's also Jeff Goldblum, so of course he dresses in black. That's actually a thing they talk about in the novel. He's always like dressed in black, which nowadays nobody thinks about that, but like the alternative all dressed in black thing
right.
was just popping off at that time. But if you read the book, whole chapters start with mathematical stuff that's like from Ian Malcolm's notes. The whole point is to get to the point where he gets to deliver the line, life will find a way. That's like the whole point of having him in this thing, is that you can't control shit. Like chaos happens, right?
He's basically the priest warning you're messing with powers beyond the mortal kin.
Yeah. His famous line when they take a tour and they find out that they're actually breeding dinosaurs and stuff like that, he said, quote, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Yes. Yes.
Which is, of course, that is the theme of Jurassic Park. And so this is why I say he's kind of like the Mary Sue character, that like he is Crichton's voice in this.
Yeah.
But before all that happens, we also find out about Nedry.
Yes.
He's basically in charge of the computer systems on the island, which control everything, right?
Right. Yeah.
Played by Wayne Knight, who is like Newman from
Newman.
Seinfeld, right? Seinfeld started in '89, so he was already known as Newman, on that. So he's like the stereotypical computer nerd, right?
Right.
Like Cheetos and stuff all over the desk and stuff like that. I will point out that his name is literally Nerdy, Nerdy, 2 letters reversed, so it's Nedry. This is what I mean about like how being a nerd back then was actually an outsider thing. Like nowadays it's like cool and all of that, but it definitely wasn't then. There's actually a scene where the 2 kids on the island, who are the grandchildren of John Hammond,
Yeah.
they're like talking about dinosaur stuff, and Timmy calls her a nerd, and she's
Yes.
like, I'm not a computer nerd. I prefer to be called a hacker,
Yes. Which, it's a key point, and a nice touch. Obviously, Tim is all nerdy about science and dinosaurs, but his sister gets to be a nerd out about stuff too. She has her own skill, and it actually comes in useful later.
Yeah, but just the fact that nowadays nobody would take that as an insult.
Right.
Nobody that was an actual nerd, but like everybody's like, we even call this show Geek Channel 8. Like nobody,
I mean, it really is. The tide has turned. I always one of the things I like to point to is the rise of fantasy football, which at that point I'm like, no, look here, guys, I don't want to hear shit from you anymore.
Yeah,
I never want to hear any jock or jock adjacent person giving me any kind of shit, because you guys are pretending to coach teams, and the truth is, they've always been nerds. They're just nerds about a different thing.
Well, and also it's like, so a lot of players who are capable of like playing football or whatever, I have all the respect for that. But there are tons of people who are like, oh, so and so should have done this, the Monday morning quarterback. I'm like, yeah, it's easy for you to say that. You can't do that shit. It's like,
yeah, I mean, and honestly, they're not even playing pickup games on the weekends. It's not like they're like, oh yeah, and we do this at home, and they're like, no, man. But they're really into it. They're nerdy out about it. I mean, I didn't even know what box scores really were, but like when I found out that it's like, no, we record for ourselves all this stuff about hitting and pitching and all that stuff. It's like, you guys are just nerds. You're just nerds about a different thing. So maybe you don't be jerks to people. I mean,
that's what makes Moneyball such a great film.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't really like sports films usually, especially team sport films. Like the best sports films are stuff like boxing movies, like Rocky or whatever. But where it's like one person, against the odds. Team sports movies usually don't do much for me, but Moneyball is awesome because it's about the nerd, like the guy that's like,
right, it really is.
He's like crunching the numbers and he's like min-maxing
the
players like characters, and he's like, oh, this guy can do blah, 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 and he's undervalued. We should get him,
yeah.
Anyway, he, for whatever reason, feels like he's not being paid enough or needs money or something like that. So he like sets up a meeting with the competition, some other company that wants the dinosaurs, and they're gonna pay him a lot of money to smuggle out the dinosaur DNA. And they give him a can of Barbasol shaving cream or whatever, and it has a secret compartment to hide the vials of DNA in. And one of the reasons I enjoy Steven Spielberg films, he's got a ton of money, so he can make these hugely budgeted films with great special effects. But he also has this great sense of humor. So there's little things like in this, Nedry's like checking out the Barbasol and he sprays some of the shaving cream in his hand, and then like they're in a restaurant and he turns around and he like chops the dollop on top of a slice of pie. I guess just to be a dick. I don't know.
Yeah, no, they do things in that scene where he's just like, the guy's like, he's like, over here, so and so, and he's like, don't use my name. He's like, and then he proceeds to use his name on purpose over and over again. See, no one cares.
He's like, he's over here. He's over here. He's like, yeah. See, no one cares.
Yeah, I mean, because they're in some country where English is not the first language, and he's just like whatever. He's super ugly American about it. So you don't really love Nedry, but he has a big personality, and I think he really sells it. You're not supposed to like him that much, but he definitely sells the character archetype. Love that. Yeah,
Speaking of the big special effects, we can't put this off any longer. The highlight of this film is also what I consider to be the thing that has aged the best about this film, which is the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are the stars. Think about how early in CGI this was. This was the dawn of CGI, and it still looks good today, all these years later.
Even the kid liked it, and he's a harsh critic. He will laugh his butt off, and he's like, "Really, Dad? No, I don't think you guys watched this." I'm like, "Yeah, it was good back then." The first scene where they were interacting really closely with the creature, that was a sick dinosaur with Laura Dern.
Yeah,
my kid's reaction was like, "You're gonna infect it with your dirty hand." I'm like, so obviously it just sold the like, he was worried about the creature, right?
Yeah,
which is like, that's how you did it right. It's like, oh wow, yeah, okay. I mean, and for context, my kid is not a child. He's 16. He goes to school at the zoo and like takes care of like armadillos and stuff. So it really worked for him. He really liked that. We'll probably watch the second one together too. But
awesome.
We got to the point where they're on the island. They do the introduction, right? He doesn't tell them what they're going to see. He doesn't tell them anything. And then they drive up. They're driving, in a safari car.
And the safari car, this is what, in my opinion, I already talked about what aged best, the dinosaur effects. The safari car is what has aged the poorest, because there's a scene where Timmy is like, it even has CD-ROM, like
yeah. Do you think the safari car and the whole thing is, there was do you think so a lot of this was like, we're definitely going to have a ride somewhere. This is going to be,
I think they were planning on that from the beginning. It's like, we're gonna sell this to, or their own studio, since everything is probably already vertically integrated back then. So it's not going to be Disney. It's going to be like Universal Studios, whatever their theme park holdings are. It's going to be a ride, right? And the thing is, for some reason, Crichton has always been obsessed with theme parks. Like, that is a thing of his. So it's like Westworld, Future World.
Yeah.
I think he even had one or two other things prior to Jurassic Park that had to do with theme park type stuff. I don't know what his deal with theme parks is, but it's a recurring theme in Crichton's work.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe he had a horrific experience as a child.
Yeah, on the Small World ride at Disney, which is creepy as hell. I think they finally got rid of it, right? Recently.
I don't know. That seems like one of those things that's a sacred cow that you wouldn't want to, but on the other hand, who knows? Yeah, so the safari cars is where they first get to encounter, the beasties. They get to we get to see them. Of course, they jump out. There's this whole thing where Laura Dern's obsessing over a leaf that she found because she's a paleobotanist. She's like, this doesn't belong here. This shouldn't even exist. This exist. And then he reaches down because he's staring at the dinosaur. He turns her head to look, and they're all just entranced. They get out, and then it's these giant brontosauruses. There are super, and they are geeking out. There's even a part where he puts his head between his knees because he's like hyperventilating, about to pass out because it's so overwhelming. That goes from there to basically, how did you do this? And he goes and he shows them a very Disney-esque, ride where it's explaining how they did it. It's exposition for the viewer. And when we've gotten enough, rather than keep us going, he has the three scientists like, we need to go in because they're like right across from, they're showing the actual genetic engineers at work. And when they tell them, oh, these are actual scientists, they're actually doing that right now. They're like, oh, we gotta go see them there. And they get out of the ride and they go in, and we get to meet the guy who did all the genetic engineering. And we get to meet the dinosaur baby. Yeah.
Anyway, they get back on and they go on further. Meanwhile, Nedry has gone and like stolen the dinosaur DNA stuff from the labs and sabotage things.
Yeah.
And we find out that a tropical storm is about to hit the island.
Yeah.
And so all of this results in a situation where the Jeep tour is stalled out because the power has been cut by Nedry,
Yeah.
so that he can get into the enclosures and stuff like that. And the Jeep stops right outside the T-Rex enclosure, and the electric fences that keep the dinosaurs in has been turned off. So we get our, first encounter with what we think for most of this film is the big bad, the T-Rex.
Mhm.
There's basically an entire scene where they're stuck in two Jeeps on the trail at night in a storm when the T-Rex attacks.
Yes.
This is one of the best parts of this film. Like, this is just excellent. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it.
Obviously, he's been doing this stuff for a long time, but it almost feels effortless how it hits these beats because you have children in peril. They're doing not the smartest things. You have a grown person who abandons them to their fate. Fate runs off, leaves them.
Even before the T-Rex arrives,
Yeah.
this is like the spiritual successor to Jaws, which is why we're doing it now. Instead of the music alerting us, there's like this impact
Yes.
percussion through the ground and like the glass of water, where you see
Yes.
like the rings as like the sound of the dinosaurs like feet hitting the ground. Like, this is total Godzilla stuff.
Yeah. My kid was all, again, this is a modern kid who, like, when I try to show them old cartoons, was like, where's the plot development? That was when they were like, 9. Where's the character development? What's this going on? Was this, so they're very modern in it, but they were engaged, and they're like, why are you have the light on? Turn off the light, yelling at the little girl. And
Yeah.
and then, because she was scared, so she found a flashlight and and that was enough to attract the attention. And then you had the hero character step up and distract the dinosaur, but they keep the tension up. Well, he helps one kid escape. The other one gets caught in the car. They're using the dinosaur's poor vision to try to evade it, and they manage to do so. But the kid in the car gets pushed over the edge. They're already over the edge. It has to go over top of them. He just barely misses them. The car gets stuck in a tree. They're at least safe from the dinosaur. But what about the other kid? He goes up and gets the kid, and he gets him out of the car, and they barely just escape. It's like one after the other, boom, 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 just constant. Yeah, they really nail that.
Yeah. And the thing is, the guy that that leaves the kids alone, the lawyer guy.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to see a lawyer get killed. This is the only flaw I've ever found in this scene, is that he runs and he hides out in a bathroom hut.
Yeah.
And then the T-Rex is chasing Ian Malcolm, who like tries to get the attention of the T-Rex away from the kids
Yeah.
and get the T-Rex to chase him. And the T-Rex does chase him. And then it cuts to a scene of the T-Rex busting through this hut and eating that lawyer guy before it comes back to like Ian Malcolm being injured and stuff like that. So I never understood why the T-Rex is coming after Ian, then it kills this other guy, then it
Yeah,
goes
it seemed
back
like
to Ian.
he ran into that Ian ran into the hut or part of it, right? Or ran past. I'm not sure. He gets caught in the debris. Well, but it really is. It's setting up because we want to see. I mean, literally, the whole hut is gone, but he's sitting there on the toilet. It's like, yeah, we very much it delivers what we want, which is, oh, we're gonna see this asshole get eaten. Not the heroics, not the kids, but they're definitely in. I mean, like honestly, like there was a lot of child like peril. I'm like, oh, I forgot how much peril there was here.
It highlights something else that I want to mention, which is that the dinos aren't the only danger in the park, right? It's
Yeah.
still got cliffs and mudslides. Nedry like falls down a mudslide and almost
Yeah.
dies from that alone. He's
Yeah.
eventually attacked by, I think it's a Dilophosaurus, this frilled dinosaur that
Yeah.
spits venom. If I remember correctly, and it's been a long ass time, in the novel, I think he falls and hurts his back or something. And then these tiny little dinosaurs come and like nibble him to death. They basically eat him a little bit at a time.
Which I mean, you're gonna have an opportunist. That's how it works in the nature. But yeah,
I would have
no.
rather seen that than the frilled venom splitting dinosaur, but I think they wanted another cool toy.
Oh yeah, that.
Meanwhile, while all this is going on, Samuel L. Jackson,
Yes.
the head of computer security type stuff or whatever, he says he can't fix this without Nedry's help. He's trying to solve this problem of the fact that
Yeah, he sabotaged everything. Okay, so I had to tell because earlier on when my kid was like, Dad, does he make it? I'm like, no. He's like, are there any other black people in this movie? I'm like, there's at least one, and you will recognize them, maybe. And so later, when we got Samuel Jackson, I'm like, you know who that guy is? That's Nick Fury. Like, oh, yeah, really? Wow. Oh. But yeah, I honestly I love it because he's actually not playing his usual thing. He's got it, which he is notorious. He's like, I will do any movie for enough money. What? Give me a job, I will do it. He's like the Black American version of Kane. When people ask him, it's like, well, how would you? He's like, I did everything, anything anybody asked me, I did it. I did not turn down any jobs. I don't turn, basically he just did them. And Samuel Jackson, notorious for that as well. But honestly, I thought he was good in this. He did what he needed to do, and was convincing. It was weird watching somebody smoke on screen, like in a facility.
yeah, times have changed. That's a thing that has not aged well, but I guess is like of its time. One thing that was just bad, not only is it not aged well, but it's just plain off the mark and bothers me the most. One of the more cringy, nerdy things in this is Lex is like, there's one point where, she has to have her screen time as being the hero too. And she's like,
Right.
this is a Unix system. I know this. And what they show is
This-
like not a Unix system at all,
not
And I'm
any
like,
system anywhere. It's just like, okay, we gotta make it sure so that the audience can see something while she's doing this. And so instead of like, cool lines of code, blah, 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 or anything, they have this, I guess somebody made it for the movie. It's this visual representation of the different, but she gets to lock the door. Okay. She does get to lock the door.
it's like not a command line interface. It is not Unix. If they had just left that line out, it would have been so much better. Like, you don't have to explain it. Just she knows how to use it. That would have been better.
It'd been awesome if they had just shown like a command line interface. And can't you just have somebody typing? They're typing furiously.
it's not visual enough, I guess. But like, this is where the Matrix, for all its scientific flaws,
Oh yeah,
actually gets a thumbs up, because the hackers in that actually use command line interface, and they use real hacks,
line code and shit. So yeah, it's cool.
It turns into basically a survival movie.
Yeah.
There's one guy who's kind of like the hunter guy.
Oh yeah.
Hammond asks him to go like save his grandkids.
Yeah. So Laura Dern and him go out to try to find the kid and her boo, Sam. They don't find them, but they do find the rock star scientist. Then they get chased by the T-Rex. Now I was a little annoyed because the guy who's like he's the big game hunter. He knows what's going on out here, and he already was like in the first one of the first scenes of the movie was like, shoot it. And I'm like, did he get his gun out then? No, they didn't have a gun, but they did have a nice chase with a dinosaur breathing down their necks, which was cool.
And this is another great, like, one of those visual jokes, because there's like, see it in the rear view mirror chasing after them.
Yes.
And it's the mirror says at the bottom, like, objects in mirror are closer than they appear. I'm like, yes, that was a nice touch.
It was a nice one. It was. So they get that. They get their and our Jeff Bloom scientist gets some great lines like we need to go now. Hall's deliveries are
very deadpan. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what Jeff Goldblum's good at.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Grant and Tim and Lex, they like hide out in the treetop and spend the night there. They get to pet some brachiosauruses and.
Yes, Lex gets sneezed on.
Yep. They also find some eggs the next morning.
Yes.
And now they know that the dinosaurs are breeding. And he remembers that they said in the little amusement park ride animation that they had to watch before all this, that they were using frog DNA. And West African frogs can change their sex in a single sex environment. And so, once again, going back to something Ian Malcolm said, life will find a way. This is a very small moment, but it sets up the sequels, and it's really kind of the oh shit moment of this whole thing, because it's no longer about just these dinosaurs. It's the fact that if dinosaurs escape, like, they can breed now. Like, humans and dinosaurs now coexist on the earth, for the first time. And what is that gonna mean?
Yeah, what will that look like? So I mean, it's like the oh shit moment. It's also it's a moment of wonder. Here's the brilliant way that they fix the problem is they turn the technical problem of the system being broken is, have you tried turning it off and on? And in fact, they turn it off and then they have to turn it back on. And the only way to turn it back on is across the thing, which is like, I think that's a plot point in like freaking Aliens too. But like, it's this chain of events, where we get like Tim on the electric fence when they do give a warning. So he's on the electric fence when the electric fence becomes re-energized, and he's like, "You got a job," is all. And he gets knocked down and he stops breathing. Like I say,
how does that not kill him? I don't know, but
I don't know either.
Because it's like, I don't know much about electricity. You're an electrician. What is 10,000 volts like a bad thing?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm like, well, they can't show a child being vaporized. I mean, literally, I've had like the back of my knuckle blown out from like house current. That was, I mean, technically, I was working in a office, but like I was working hot. You shouldn't do, but they wanted me to, and I got energized and like just blew a little hole out of the back of my knuckle. That's how, when you get energized, it's really bad. They did put bandages on his hand. Yeah, that was good. Oh, we're coming up on the big bad. This is good.
Yeah, so they shut down the power, and what that does is it sets up the next problem, which is, all this time we've been worried about T-Rexes.
Yeah.
Because everybody from their childhood, when you played with plastic dinosaurs, the big bad is always the T-Rex, right?
Oh yeah.
However, starting in roughly the 80s, I think, paleontology moved forward and was like, T-Rexes, and even nowadays, it's like, in these movies, they talk about T-Rexes hunting, and now more we believe T-Rexes are like scavengers.
Yeah.
But
kind of like bald eagles.
But
Can, huh? But why would I?
We learn more about the giant turkeys or whatever as we kick back to the main scene, establishing scene about dinosaurs. The velociraptor, which
Yeah.
has sharp, sharp claws, fangs, smart, and hunts in packs.
Oh yeah. It's bipedal. And the claws it's like a saber-tooth tiger. Instead, we'll just make those claws like that. It's a switchblade. It's like a freaking yeah, it's ridiculous. That'll be our big bad. And even Nedry was smart enough to not turn off the fence to the raptors.
Yeah.
Because as it turns out, the raptors were the thing that got the guy in the first place.
Yes.
They have to feed them with a crane.
Yeah.
That's how dangerous they are. Which,
They say we may still be safe as long as they don't know how to work doorknobs. And in the very next scene, you see the raptor like opening a door.
Okay, in fairness, if it weren't for the fact that this was a place that was ADA accessible in some sense because it has a nice lever doorknobs, they probably wouldn't have been able to get the doorknobs. But they had the levers, so
Yeah.
that's why. What we do, we have
My cat figured out how doorknobs work. Like, so who knows?
your cat is also a carnivore that, if it was large enough, would probably eat us. So there's,
Yeah.
I mean, I love cats, don't get me wrong, but like, you can have a giant dog and the dog's like, oh, I love you so much. But then if you took a house cat and made the size of a giant dog, you just have a lion. And they might like you, or they might like to play with you. It's nothing personal.
Yeah.
It's just cats are not the same. And yeah, and these are like them. I think one of my favorite scenes was it's the kids. They are left in the visitor center, I think,
Yes.
that while the adults go, because they think, oh, the danger's over, right? Or we got, you stay here.
Yeah.
They can't open doors, and so they're off to do their thing. But of course they can, and they come in, and
Well, they're eating. They're like they're in the same place where the ice cream was eaten and all that, and
yes.
there's all the food out for this big opening and stuff like that, and it's all desserts, and they're just eating, and then you just see this scene where Lex is like, first of all, Tim starts looking at Lex like, what? And then it cuts to Lex's expression, and she just gets wider and wider and wider eyed, and she's trembling. And then he looks behind, and they see the shadow
Shadow, yes, yeah,
of a raptor. And then now they know they're in for it. And it turns out there's not just one, there's two
yes,
loose in there. And now they have to run for their lives, and they hide in the kitchen. And this kitchen scene, all stainless steel, loud stuff that clatters, and stuff like that. This is another really great scene.
They have Lex distract the raptor and then go hide, right? But she's willing to risk her life to distract the raptor from her brother by making noise, and the raptor comes after her, seemingly is coming straight at her, right? And she's trying to close the door to this cabinet, and she's screaming, she's trying to close this door to this cabinet, which you're like, I don't know if that's going to do any good. And the raptor runs straight into this reflection, is what he's actually looking at. Because, of course, they don't know anything about that. And that gives them the opportunity. So that's, and to escape.
That was one of the big problems they had in shooting this, is that anyone who's made a movie knows reflective surfaces, especially mirrors, are a pain because you can see the crew and everything in it. And so like this scene was super hard, one of the hardest films to shoot in the movie because everything is reflective,
Wow.
But anyway, go ahead.
No, and the thing is like, as soon as we started the scene, they went in the kitchen. I was like, hey, just remember what is the safest place in the kitchen? And my kid's like, what? It was like, that's a walk-in cooler. Because eventually they trap one of the raptors in the walk-in cooler.
I was never quite sure how they accomplished that. Like, I thought they ran into the walk-in cooler, but somehow they didn't. And
it was, yeah, even just watching it, I'm like, how did that work? But here's what doesn't matter to me so much is I didn't feel like, well, this didn't make it. There was a lot of chaos going on. There was a lot of, and it was a scramble to survive. and I felt that I was in the moment. I wasn't like, oh, this is ridiculous. It was like I was like, oh, this sucks, and hopefully they can make it. And my kid was involved. They were like, get a knife, get something. I'm like, I don't think any of them are fast enough. They're faster than a raptor, with their claws. So might not be the way to go. But um, yeah, that escape was really cool. I really liked that.
Yeah, they escape and eventually everybody's reunited and they're still running from loose raptors. They manage to contact civilization now that everything's been restored and help is on the way. But there's this last thing where they're being chased by the remaining raptors and they wouldn't have made it except the T-Rex at the last second
Yes.
comes in and eats the raptor. And
How satisfying is that? Because even though our T Rex has always been the big bad, it's always been, when you're a kid, you associate with that. You want to be that. You want to have that cool badass power.
yeah, and it is that kind of a scene, and like you see the banner that says Jurassic Park fall, and
Oh
everything,
yeah,
and it's
they
like
really did it up. They did,
it was a nice like exclamation point on the end of the film where you're like, yes, dinos are badasses, humanity's in trouble, like, and that's pretty much the end of it.
Yeah, they get on board and they get back, and you see Attenborough. He's still looking. He's so sad and disappointed. And one of the things is that throughout every there would be a beat every now and then where he's talking about, it's like, oh well, next time we'll have to do this and this, and the other characters are like, what are you on about? The next time you still don't get it. They, to varying degrees, they were actually pretty cool on him, but it's like, no.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, like, no, 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 no. It's like, honestly, unless this was your plan all along, it, I know. Actually, come to think of it, I think he was depicted as basically a guy who created theme parks and stuff. He didn't have a background as a scientist, but his money and everything came from theme parks. But he didn't have enough money to do it all by himself either. He had investors.
In the novel, they're in this. InGen is the company, and
Yeah.
he's supposedly the founder of this genetics company, and they're the corporate bad guys. And the thing is, it downplays InGen a lot in favor of Hammond specifically.
Yeah.
And in the book, if I remember right, and it has been decades since I read the book, but my recollection is that he was more like a figurehead. Like InGen was the real, like they were the ones behind the scenes, like
Yeah.
running the show.
I just remember him talking about his first show. His first show he did, which was a flea circus, and people swore they could see the fleas. And of course, it was all just motorized little things. So I'm like, okay, so this guy's a great showman, and he wants to bring dinosaurs. So it made him more likable. He was like a likable fool. You're like, you fool! Of course, it's a great idea. I mean, it's wonderful, but no, it's a bad idea. It's like, yes, we understand the wonder that you're trying to present, but your grandkids almost got eaten, right? I mean, that should be a full stop for anybody. But I mean, as we find out, not entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's always like, next time we'll have full control. And of course, Malcolm gets it. You don't get it. There's no such thing as control. It's an illusion. Oh,
I think actually Ellie tells him that over the ice cream. Like,
yeah,
you don't
that's
get
right.
it, do you? You can't control it,
And the thing is that we historically, usually Australia, I think, but there's like so many times where we're like, hey, we're smart. We'll just introduce this animal from over here to solve this problem over there. And
Yeah.
there's always unforeseen consequences to that. Usually with cats. See, we're back at cats again.
Yeah, the infamous parachuting cats on the island of Borneo to take care of the rodent population, which exploded when I guess it had something to do with the use of DDT to kill cockroaches on the island or something.
Yeah,
And
it was like this. They brought in the cats to eat the rats, And instead, mostly the cats were like, well, you know what? Birds are fun. I like eating birds. It's like, no, that's no, that's part
Yeah.
of the problem was the rats were eating also. Yeah, we don't have a good track record with this. On the other hand, there is our track record of keeping technologies under wraps is even worse.
We'll talk about that next time. But I want to remind people to tell two friends about the show. We only exist due to word of mouth. You could also email us if you want to at GC8podcast. That's letter G, letter C, number 8 podcast at gmail.com. Until next time, this is Eric
This is Will.
signing off. Those like Disney films, 20,000
Oh
Leagues
my
Under the
gosh,
Sea.
yes.
Yeah.
Wait. What was the one this is a Disney film?
Master of the World. Master of the
That's
World.
it.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one. Because
Yeah.
it's. I mean, it's literally is. That's based. Is that based on H.G. Wells or a Jules Verne?
I think it was Jules Verne.